I proposed my reasoning yesterday why I feel Abdul Carter makes the most sense as far as what the work ahead of the Cleveland Browns is over the next two off seasons on their offense. Let's start to go a little bit deeper just on how dire things are on the offensive side of the ball for the Cleveland Browns. Browns 3D starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR, brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. We appreciate, obviously, them. We appreciate all of you coming out every day, reading all the written content that coming out here through the OBR, then joining us every night to come back. And, of course, join us for the nightly streaming here on the OBR, Browns 3D first off. You will get Fred and Barry after us here tonight on Wednesday night. Great night last night, Browns 3D. Then, of course, the React with Pete and Brad. And, of course, Garage Beers with Bo Bishop from Browns Daily after that. So we appreciate you all. Quick update. We're starting to finalize things. The goal is certainly to be streaming throughout the entirety of the 2025 NFL Draft. Still putting everything together. Trying to make sure, there's an opportunity for everybody to be involved here at the OBR throughout the telecast. Thursday night, round one. Obviously, the action will start extremely early for the Browns with picks number 2. Friday night should be a pretty impactful night for the Browns as well. Rounds 2 and 3. The Browns slated to have 3 picks that night. And then, of course, Saturday. And, Saturday is, basically where you separate the men from the boys, so to speak, as, you're talking probably anywhere from 6, if not 7 hours of coverage here on the OBR as you cover and navigate through all the selections on day 3, the final day of the 2025 NFL Draft. So, hopefully we get a lot of you and a large amount of you to come out and join us all by doing that. Now, the premise yesterday, and basically what we discussed, and with me saying that, it makes sense to get Abdul Carter, just get that out of the way. The defense essentially can be kind of put to bed as far as any major additions or, any major draft capital being need to use, understanding how much is going to be needed to be put towards the offense. Starters in 2025 for the Cleveland Browns and 2026 in the Cleveland Browns. My honest belief is from the 2024 team, the only 2 starting offensive players that will most likely be on this team in 2026 in a starting capacity will be wide receiver Jerry Jeudy and, of course, tight end David Njoku. The Browns, most likely between the 25 team and the 26 team, will be flipping over 9 new starting positions on the offensive side of the ball. Quarterback, obviously, running back, a wide receiver, the entire offensive line. There is a lot that's going to be going on here, certainly for your Browns over the next couple of years. Whereas, again, just quickly, I think Carter puts the Browns in a position where the defense has the capabilities of being top 10, if not higher, allowing you to take all of this other draft allocution and apply it to the offensive side of the ball. Now, the quarterback position, and you're starting to hear it more and more. And I believe it was Adam Schefter today spoke on, that he thinks maybe even the New York Giants are going to pass on Shedeur Sanders as well. I don't know from the New York standpoint. I'm just not there yet. I'm not sure that Russ Wilson or Jameis Winston does enough for me that stops them from doing that. You have Malik Neighbors, you have Tyrone Tracy, you have some pieces on the offensive line. I think if it's going to work, and in the case of Shedeur Sanders, I think Shedeur Sanders' best position, and I think it was Matt Miller who spoke on this, with a guy like Shedeur, I think you want to go where maybe the team is kind of mostly assembled and just happens to be in the need of a quarterback. First team that you look at probably for me is when you start maybe getting the playoff teams, and certainly Pittsburgh Steelers. Does he fall that far? Does he go that late? I don't know, but that's probably a much better situation for Shedeur Sanders than being asked to be the savior of a franchise for the Browns. Because, and again, Hunter, if you like him, and that's great and all, I have a couple of qualms with it. And for me, I think the biggest one is just putting the wide receiver before you know who the quarterback is. It just, doesn't sit well with me, because, look, if the plan is not to go quarterback at 2, which obviously it is, it looks like it is right now for the Browns, you're basically driving, you would be picking Hunter with the blind belief of who's actually going to be your quarterback. And again, it's just doesn't make sense to me, doesn't necessarily sit right with me. Then you get to the Jackson Dart and the Jalen Milrose, the Tyler Shuck thing. 26, 7 years in college. I think 3 seasons out of the 7 ended with him being injured. It just, look, it doesn't make any sense. It certainly doesn't make any sense at 33. If Tyler Shuck goes on day 3, it's a wild card. Maybe goes out, who knows? But if your plan is a 26-year-old quarterback who spent 7 seasons in college, that's a piss poor plan. That is a terrible plan. Now, we definitely think Dart, is certainly a name that's really, really hot right now. And this usually happens, with quarterbacks and all this stuff. It certainly happens as they cycle through, pro days, etc. Basically when each guy gets the limelight for themselves, the opportunity where it's just them and NFL personnel, the combine kind of clouds things because everybody's talking to everybody. Dart, younger than the top quarterbacks mentioned in this class, be 22 soon. So age lines up. Certainly was at USC. Caleb Williams goes to USC. Jackson Dart's got to find a new home. Jackson Dart goes to Ole Miss, connects with Kiffin. They weren't world beaters in the Ole Miss at Ole Miss by any means, but certainly, Jackson Dart, certainly played well. I think one of the things that really, really impressed people about Jackson Dart is how well he handles the blitz, how well he handles pressure. Doesn't get rattled, doesn't force them into mistakes, and most importantly, if you've heard me talk on Shedeur Sanders, doesn't take the sacks, which is huge, absolutely crucial. There's one thing that's completely, not talked about in regards to, the negatives in Shedeur Sanders, and it is the taking of terrible sacks. And again, I've said it a few times, and I'll continue to say it. I don't know how that improves the NFL level. Yes, he will have better offensive line in front of him, but he will also be playing against pass rushers who are a heck of a lot better than Big 12 worthy. Milroe, and again, I'm not sure how much necessarily is there between Milroe and the Browns. And certainly, the connection to Tommy Rees. Browns certainly connected through the Senior Bowl to both Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe. I don't know if this is something that I keep trying to, make a fire out of a little smoldering because of their relationship. It could be something. It could absolutely have nothing to do with it. It could be that they prefer one, but like the other, whether it's Dart, Milroe, Dart, et cetera, but certainly makes, for the interesting, way this is all going to break down for Cleveland. As far as, Kirk Cousins coming into the, quarterback equation. Look, if I got to trade for him, it's going to be a 2026 pick. And the value of that pick is going to depend on what actually I have to pay him. Do I think the Browns would possibly pay more for a lower pick to Atlanta? I think that's possible, certainly. But again, where this is getting to, and I think somebody suggested floated a 2nd-round pick for Kirk Cousins right now. Nobody's going to do that. And honestly, the biggest problem the Atlanta Falcons have is I don't think there's another team remotely interested in Kirk Cousins. Everybody was interested when you were going to get him for league minimum, 1.283, whatever the heck it is. But now once you have to give up a trade asset for him, you have to pay him more than league minimum. All of a sudden, the bloom certainly came off the rose. That is Kirk Cousins in that scenario. But, this is just one of many positions on the offensive side of the ball of the Cleveland Browns that they are seriously in a almost full rebuild of the entire room. This room right now consists of Kenny Pickett, and a quarterback that was part of this room in 2024 is not here and is not going to be here. Jameis gone, DTR gone. Deshaun, whatever designation you want to give that, go ahead and give it that. But completely redoing, almost every positional group on the offensive side of the ball within a 2-year period. This may be a reason why Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are safe and are a lot safer in their positions than some people would like to believe. We're going to continue on here, certainly hit on the other positional groups here. On the offensive side of the ball, your latest Browns 3D continues on. Appreciate everybody for being along here with us all. We've been talking about our good friends, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights now for a couple of months. If you are local to Cleveland, then they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. You want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you're looking for a new dependable time cutter zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. They are veteran owned. The Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders. They are lifetime Browns fans and proud supporters of us here at the OBR. Again, if you are local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. Browns 3D on the OBR continue again. Appreciate everybody here for the support. Obviously, for the site, the written work here, this nightly streaming. You guys have been, awesome here, and it's really been a fun ride here. The lack of draft, basically content folks have been able to produce the last couple of years without the Browns having, a full complement of picks, not having top picks. I mean, again, this team has made one pick in the top 64 in the last 3 drafts. So to be able to get back into producing this type of content and getting to talk about all these prospects overall, for me, it's been a blast. Honestly forgot how much I enjoyed draft coverage, draft content, in the 3 years that we really, just haven't been able to, give it as much effort as, it entails when you're covering the entirety of the draft. When you're talking about first and second round prospects, by now, most of you who are even just casual to the experience, the names. Last couple of years, it was, kind of hard to say, hey, here's a guy most you're going to find outside of the top 100, but maybe he's somebody that could fit for Cleveland at 93. Now, and again, like I said yesterday, with, basically the Titans and Cam Ward, basically already, joined at the hip, the top of the draft certainly feels like it is the Cleveland Browns, even though they hold the second selection. We've been talking about certainly, the amount of work and the in-depth work that's going to need to be done for the Cleveland Browns offense, finishing off through here the 2025 offseason, certainly with eyes towards the 2026 offseason, where you could be rebuilding an entire offensive line or maybe even 4/5 of it. There's a lot of work here. I believe between, the final, of 2024 to 2026, you will probably only have 2 holdovers starting on the offensive side of the ball. And again, Jerry Jeudy and, of course, David Njoku. The running back position, look, right now we just still consist of Jerome Ford on the roster. For some, the feelings vary on Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford in 2023 was an integral part of that team's success. Given just having to be thrown into the game, certainly, again, the Monday night game in Pittsburgh, scored right away, 2-point conversion right away, had a big, Marcus Allen zigzag across the field run late in that game. And then kind of went on to be a pretty positive performer, for the Browns, certainly as a runner and certainly as a receiver. It was 12 touchdowns, something like that, 12, 13 touchdowns. I think it was 1,200 total yards of offense. But Jerome, into 2025, this is the final year of his rookie deal. And besides him, you have Pierre Strong in the room, but Pierre Strong would have had plenty of opportunity to get run here the last couple of years. If they ain't putting him on the field, it kind of tells you maybe exactly where they feel or what their stance is, certainly on the capabilities of Pierre Strong. It was a guy I kind of like, but Pierre Strong just needs a lot of things to go right for him to be successful. Sure, he's fast, but, you can't always guarantee that there's just open grass in front of you in the NFL. It doesn't work that way, my friend. Now, Nick Chubb, does Nick Chubb come back? I honestly believe the longer this goes, certainly the odds increase of Nick Chubb returning to the Cleveland Browns. And this is something I had been saying to you guys, and I certainly, I've said this in the past in regards to people, players like this. And it was something similar they went through with Jarvis Landry as well back in the day. It's really hard when you have guys who have meant a lot to your organization and, their contract ends. You, as the team who's been with the player, don't necessarily want to be the one who give out the first offer. Because, and especially in the instance of Landry, where the play was declining, Chubb, I think it's more injury, and we just don't know what the expectations could be. If you tell me, he's as healthy as he could be, I believe we all believe the expectations for Nick Chubb could be a 1,000-yard season, given ample touches. But you don't know that. And again, you're making a decision here in April that, you are not going to know the key information of it till August. So, you're trying to make a monetary decision 4 months ahead of time when maybe you just don't know how all that's truly going to work out. But I do believe the Nick Chubb thing, the Cleveland Browns thing, will work itself out. And, if you think about it, there's one name you haven't really heard much of, as far as the free agent market at all in any way whatsoever, and that is Nick Chubb. But that being said, this is a tremendous, and I mean tremendous, running back class. There is running back value on day 1, day 2, day 3, rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 7. There are running backs to be had. If you like the running back position, this is the running back class for you. Now, the reality of it, and where, the Browns could be in this or could not be in this. Austin Gentry, most likely going to go top 10 or at worst 10, maybe the Bears, obviously not a realistic option for the Cleveland Browns. And again, you may have to rebuild the offensive line next year. You don't have the quarterback yet. You need weapons in the passing game. Austin Gentry wouldn't be somebody that would be on their radar at this point in time anyway. Omarion Hampton, and of course, Caleb Johnson, Quinshawn Judkins, Travion Henderson. For me, all guys that most likely are going to fit maybe at 33 with maybe one of those guys, maybe Hampton sneaking in too late round 1. But again, if the premise is taking somebody other than a quarterback at 2, you highly feel like pick 33 is kind of maybe spoken for as either your quarterback targeting spot or your ammunition to jump further from north to get the quarterback. And I do think there'll be a quarterback drafted here, and I do think there'll be a quarterback drafted again in 2026. So now you get to that 67 range, and maybe it could be Caleb Johnson. And I think, where Caleb ran, where Caleb tested, everything was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that there were guys who tested so well. I think maybe people kind of forgot about, the incredible play, just how good Caleb Johnson was this past fall for Iowa. So I think a lot of people, sometimes the way it works, like you want to stack everything together, you want to have a good season. If you do the Senior Bowl, you want to get, build up there, combine, And I think Caleb Johnson had a perfectly acceptable combine. But I just think that other guys tested so much more athletically, it really put him into a tough spot. TJ Giddens, Kansas State, certainly a fine player in his own right. Cam Scadaboo was certainly a guy that a lot of people, I think, like the makeup of him. If you're going to running backs, yeah, I mean, I guess he could be a part of it. It's probably not a guy for me. I just, the testing, the jumps were good. The speed was not. But, adding a player like that into a team's locker room and a guy who basically showed you he will put an entire offensive unit on his back like he did this past season for Arizona State, it's a good player to have in the room. The question is, how much does he bring in this jump into the NFL level? Bashal Tootin out of Virginia Tech. The tape was good. I mean, and certainly looked like a productive player down at Virginia Tech. I don't know how much of, basically the load he's going to be able to carry at the NFL level. but ridiculous speed, certainly. I'm still an Ollie Gordon fan at Oklahoma State. This year was not his best showing. You go back to his first 2 years, certainly down in Stillwater, Oklahoma, a very, very highly productive, highly producing player. For me, I really like what you can get done on day 3, whether it's Dylan Sampson, whether it's a guy like Devin Neal from Kansas, LaQuint Allen from Syracuse, Donovan Edwards from Michigan. These are names that you could certainly get on day 3. And, the possibility of, hitting on a 6th, maybe even a 7th round pick for a running back, it's such a huge win for a franchise, because you're essentially paying nothing and you have an opportunity to get certainly, some good production. I mean, take into account what Jerome Ford did in his 2nd and his 3rd year in the league, and then factor in the fact that he was drafted in the 5th round. That was really, really solid production. Again, an Andrew Berry win. And nobody ever talks about Andrew Berry's wins. They only talk about the losses. But you could put together, say Dylan Sampson or Devin Neal, get LaQuint Allen as well. You get those 2 backs on day 3. That's more playmakers into the offense. Certainly something, that is certainly going to help this team to improve this offense all the way around, which is something they absolutely drastically need to do. Now, the wide receiver position is a lot different. It really is this year. I don't know how it's truly going to work, because this class, again, it is just different. Ted McMillan, good size, good arm length, good above the rim ability. Question with Ted McMillan is, the amount of separation he can create at his size, and doesn't have, I don't want to say good quickness, because that's disgracing him. Doesn't have elite quickness that allows you to get in and out of your routes as quickly as you are. Again, kind of similar to Keon Coleman last year, though. He's got the long arms. He's got the big hands. If you're a quarterback who can hit the open window, he's got you all day long. He's got you. As long as you can get that ball in the window, you are an accurate passer. Ted McMillan is a weapon for your offense in the NFL, even though he is not as athletically ideal as you would hope him to be. Luther Burden, the tape is great. I don't know how we're talking about an offense in Missouri in 2024 that couldn't even throw for 3,000 yards. That's just staggering that a collegiate offense could not throw for 3,000 yards. So certainly Luther Burden has, below average production. His 8.5 hand size is not something I like, unless he's going to play in a dome, which he wouldn't be doing for the Cleveland Browns for at least another 5 seasons. But Burden is nice. Gets open, has great separation. If he were on any other school, the production probably would have been really, really good. Just wasn't working out so well for him in Missouri, even if he had Pete Smith's binky at quarterback in Brady Cook. Double E at Ohio State. I'm going to be honest. I don't know why he is not getting more love. The testing all lined up. For 4 years in Columbus, and essentially every year he was never the dude. He was always part of a group of dudes, always good, always productive, made a lot of huge catches in his time at Ohio State, was never the guy. That's not his fault. And I just don't understand. Because for me, I think he's probably the best wide receiver in this class. And maybe I think I say that because I think he's maybe the safest wide receiver in this class. So, yeah, it's not a sexy class. It's not greatly appealing as some of the wide receiver classes in the last few years. But still, there's something to it. Trey Harris was interesting at certainly Ole Miss with Jackson Dart. Injury, obviously caught, hurt into the season. Healthy now. Who knows? Maybe if you're a Jackson Dart team who draft him, could be Cleveland, could be several others, in the mentioning when the name Jackson Dart comes up, maybe you try to bring in some familiarity for that quarterback, and for Jackson Dart, Trey Harris would be that guy. I really struggle with the rest of the wide receiver class as a whole. I just don't know necessarily where, a lot of the options or a lot of the bang for the buck is, in this class. And, look, it's bound to happen. You just can't have a run forever of just great wide receiver classes. And it does seem odd this year. You're going to have a weak quarterback class, certainly going to have a weak wide receiver class as well. Not usually the way it goes, and certainly a little bit of a different thing for, the Browns this year. I mean, for the NFL draft as a whole this year. Hey, there is no control over it. Some things just happen the way they do happen, right? Now, the tight end, and again, I'm surprised they haven't signed a veteran to this point. I really am. And, I think Tyler Conklin, who ended up going to the Chargers, was a name I think would have looked really, really good here. But, to bring in maybe a veteran hand in dirt and guy, and then you get to the class. I don't think Warren or Loveland are going to line up with where the Browns are going to be selecting. Maybe one of them drops into that range where the Browns would trade up for a quarterback. But, I mean, you're trading up for a quarterback and trading up for a tight end, certainly. Gunnar Helm out of Texas, I think after everyone realized what happened at the Combine, and that's what gave the low athletic scoring, and I think more people came away impressed that he just didn't say screw it and just basically pack up and go home because he rolled the ankle. Certainly the tape in Texas was pretty decent. The production certainly was pretty decent. Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, and again, I continue to talk about this guy. He's a guy I keep circling back to. Really, once had a full year of health like he did in the season of 2024, certainly playing with a NFL caliber quarterback in Cam Ward, you really kind of got to see the full, ability of Elijah Arroyo. Certainly a guy that, probably has some work to do, but when you're talking 6'4", 250, similar to when David Njoku came out of Miami, you kind of bank on that, and, hopefully just through natural development, becomes more of a full threat tight end. When David first got here, he was just a big ball of athleticism, and to his credit, his stance, blocking abilities, all stuff that David Njoku took extremely seriously, and, was able to turn himself into the caliber player who went from first round contract to a second contract, and wouldn't stun me if there's another contract coming somewhat soon for David Njoku here with the Cleveland Browns. Now, as you kind of get through all of this, and I'm sorry, one guy I wanted to hit on, and I know his name's been pretty popular lately, and certainly Bowling Green, Harold Fannin. I think Harold Fannin, I don't know if you guys remember, used to, and to say he was a tight end for the Titans, I don't know if tight end is maybe accurate. That's what he was listed as. But he basically just an H-back, ran fullback patterns. But Delaney Walker, I think Harold Fannin had a really nice 3-cone looking to the rest of his athletic numbers, which, maybe disappointed a little bit. But for me, 3-cone is always a very vital score in what kind of route runner I think you can be. Granted, he's not going to bring you elite height at the position. But Harold Fannin Jr., I think there's a role where this guy catches a lot of balls in the NFL. It's just kind of maybe, a little bit of a dirtier role, and just, the route tree that's probably going to work with him. So I think Harold Fannin is certainly, a guy that, you may not have the actual, terminology of what maybe his position is on your team. But I think much like Delaney Walker used to do back in the day, he was a guy that's going to give you production. He is a guy that will get open and will catch things that are thrown to him. Mason Taylor, the last guy I want to hit on, and certainly this is what happens though when you get these 6'6", 240, 250 pound, you want to see it all. You want full legit tight end work, hand in dirt, be able to block, be able to push around a defensive end. And because these kids are so young and not completely muscularly filled out yet, you have your questions about the limitations on their game and what they will ultimately be able to achieve. So, but it is a great class with a ton of potential. But that's just skill-wise here, things the Cleveland Browns can do for this offense in 2025. You have an offensive line for 2025. You maybe got to draft an offensive tackle. I'm more than okay with that. Anthony Belton on day 3 from North Carolina State, Logan Brown from day 3, Kansas, Charles Grant, day 3, William and Mary. You want to take any one of those guys as a developmental guy towards 2026, That totally works for me. But you really got to do some work on the skill here in 2025, because there's going to be a lot of time, money, draft choices that are going to be isolated for what will be the offensive line rebuild in 2026. Again, we all appreciate you greatly for coming out here to support of us each and every day. Browns 3D on the OBR has brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. Again, big thanks to them. Big thanks to all of you. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.